I had Michelle for undergraduate and graduate. So she is an MBA student. And she's also an athlete, play basketball at JSU. Besides that, she's a graduate assistant, right, for sports management. She's also served at Longhorn Steakhouse. So with a little bit of help with her manager at Longhorn, she conducted a fascinating research. It's about how whether you incorporate personal touch to customers, such as refer to their name or carry a smile and personal talk, can actually encourage customer satisfaction. In other way, whether customers are willing to pay more tips or spend more money at a restaurant. Without further ado, we would like Michelle, tell us what did she find during this study.
Thank you. So hi, I'm Michelle, and my project is on consumer behavior and personal touches in the restaurant industry. So to start, I'm going to give you guys a brief introduction into the restaurant industry. So the restaurant industry is a growing industry expected to reach over $1 trillion in revenue over the next year. With that, a lot of competitors are trying to enter this field, which means a 45% increase in competition. And also, according to the National Restaurant Association, 64% of customers claim that their dining experience is actually more important than the price of their meal, which will come back into play later in the presentation. So, as Dr. Coco mentioned, I work at Longhorn Steakhouse. I've been at Longhorn Steakhouse for going on 3 years now, and I'm a certified trainer there. And so, Longhorn Steakhouse is a chain restaurant that is owned and operated by Darden Restaurants, and they also have over 500 locations within the United States. As a certified trainer, my job is to train new people that want to join our team, especially servers. We have different front of house, back of house, but I train the servers mainly. And so Longhorn has what we call our loyalty rules. The R stands for refer to guests by name. The U stands for unexpected personal touches. L stands for legendary steaks. E stands for enthusiastic hellos and goodbyes, and also execution. And S stands for superb recovery. Along with that, we also have 6 core values. And our core value number 4 is committed to continuous training and development, which is where I come into play. So Longhorn has a standard that they want all their employees to follow by, and a lot of it comes from creating personal touches with the customers. By personal touch, we mean referring to guests by name, just connecting to them, making personal connections with them, learning more about them. Those are what we call personal touches in the restaurant. So throughout my literature review, I went over 5 main key points and 3 theories. So my first one I want to talk about today is the norm of reciprocity, which is a social convention that compels people to return a favor when someone has helped them. As it pertains to the restaurant industry, this could be in the form of tips. For example, if a guest believes that I provide a great service, they will have to show their appreciation to me by tipping me a higher percentage. Also, the mere exposure effect. It means people show an increased preference or liking of a stimulus the more they're exposed to that stimulus. As I mentioned before, I've been working at Longhorn for over 2 years. I see the same people sometimes every week, even though I'm not very familiar with them, I don't know their names, but they see me a lot. And the more they see me, they become more familiar with me, and also just they prefer to have me as their server. Even if I don't know them personally, I remember their face and I've seen you a lot before, so they're more familiar with me. Also, the personalization effect or the military effect, which means people engage better with information that is personalized to them. Part of my job is to recommend dishes to guests. So what I like to do personally is, people ask me, what do I recommend? Instead of saying my favorite, I'll ask them, what type of food do you like? Or what did you have to eat yesterday, so I can offer them something new. And also for the mere exposure effect, I want to say that I've worked at Longhorn almost every Sunday. I've only missed 3 Sundays in 1 year. And I will say that those customers have gotten very familiar with me. And I also have one guest that comes in every single Sunday, and now I'm at the point where I can remember their order for them. And going back to the personalization effect, they get a New York strip cooked medium rare every Sunday. Sometimes I'm like, you had the strip last week. You want to change it up for me today, or do you want to go with the salmon? Because I know you love salmon. And that's just part of my job, is making a personalized experience, connecting with guests. And also consumer engagement and appreciation, it goes a step beyond consumer satisfaction, and it involves better rapport with customers. As I said, I'm able to remember some customers' whole order. Some customers, I remember their drink order, their food order, and sometimes on a Tuesday, they may want a multi-log cake. So that's just something I kind of keep in mind when I'm talking to my guests. Also, social pressure. People are influenced by their peers and are likely to make purchasing decisions because people tend to trust and be more receptive to opinions and people in their social circles. So when people become more familiar with me, they start to trust my opinion more. It's like, Michelle, what do you think about this particular dish? And I'm very honest about it. So they say, how are the pork chops? I'm like, well, sometimes they're a bit tough, so I probably wouldn't go for that for you. But I know that you do like this, so I recommend something else instead. And they seem to trust me better because they trust my opinion and they seem more familiar with me. For my methodology, so I work at the Lone Pine Steakhouse in Trustville. So my manager gave me permission to use our stats and also use our servers in a study. So in this study, we had two groups. We had 140 tables total, with 70 in Group A. Group A received personal touches throughout their dining experience, which include, as I mentioned, referring to them by their name and just making personal connections with them. Group B was the opposite. However, we did not make personal connections with them, but we were still personable and provided great service so that it wouldn't skew the data. Also, it's part of our job. So, and we looked at 5 variables: the amount spent per guest, the tip percentage, the time spent, add-ons, and also the frequency of how often a guest would visit the restaurant. And frequency, as we'll get to it later, is one of those things that's hard to measure. However, one of the questions that I'm supposed to ask when I go to the table is, hey, is this your first time here, or have you been here before? And usually I'll gauge the answer based on what they say, or I'll just straight ask them like, how many times a year do you usually come here? And they usually like start a conversation and everything. So that's very helpful for frequency. So throughout this study, I used multiple servers, and after each visit, they wrote down their data, and I put it into my chart. So as you can see with Group A, on average, they spent a little bit over $4 more, and the amount spent per guest, and this is basically calculated by the total amount spent divided by how many people were at the table. So if they spent $100 and there were 5 people at the table, spent $20 per guest. So that's how I calculated that. And Group A that received personal touches actually spent more per guest than Group B. Now the average tip percentage, it had a great difference. So Lone Pine has on their receipts, they have an 18, 20, and 22%. 20% is like the standard in the United States. So for Group A, their percentage at 30%, which is way over percentage, which is actually really nice for the servers. Group B had 23.33%, which is actually above the average as well, which is good. But 7%, almost a 7% increase, that's a major jump there. Now the average time spent, there wasn't that big of a difference. Group A is just above like 0.75 minutes, which is almost the same. And the add-on average, this also wasn't a significant difference because it was only $1.10 more. And my manager, he prints out a timesheet for us every week. It has our add-ons, it has our service to decide things. And on add-ons, this is probably the standard one. It should be maybe like around $3, which is just like the regional average. But this is actually not that big of a difference if I compare it to the company and the region's numbers. And also the frequency. So I used the 4-point scale for the frequency, as I'll show you in my next slide. But it showed on average that Group A were more frequent visitors than Group B. And here is the frequency that I was mentioning. So for NA, those responses where I was not able to gauge a proper answer for that. So I just put those in NA and I just calculated based off the 1 through 4 of these I have here. And so I use a 1 for visit 1 to 5 times a year, a 2 for 6 to 10 times per year, a 3 for 11 to 15 times per year, and a 4 for over 15 times per year. And as you guys can see here, Group A was the highest in the highest frequency with over 15 times a year. And also Group B led in the second ones, which was 11 to 15 times a year. So as part of my discussion, I noted that Group A spent on average $4.45 more than Group B. And as I said mentioned, Group A is the one that received the personalized touch during the dining experience. They tipped 6.98% higher than Group B. And there were no significant differences between the add-ons and the time spent. And on average, Group A were more frequent visitors. Now, as it relates to the amount spent, there are some factors that I would like to take into consideration, and also the time spent. So we have our lunch menu and also our dinner menu. Our dinner menu is on average like $3 more than the lunch menu, but we did conduct a study where we had samples from both of those. And also lunch, people tend to spend more time there too. They like to talk with their friends and everything. And dinner is like one of those fast-paced settings where we turn tables quicker to make more money because servers have less tables. So as I mentioned, part of what I mentioned for our limitations, the time of year. Also in a restaurant, we consider like our dead time, the time where people are not willing to spend as much money. This study was conducted in January and February, and January is one of our dead times where we don't get as many frequent visitors. That could affect the amount spent and also tip percentages. And also, I conducted parties on Valentine's Day, which may have had a bit of a difference in the data because people on Valentine's Day were willing to spend more money, which kind of made up for the January part of it. Also, the location, as I mentioned before, it was conducted in Trussville, Alabama, and their average household income is over $120,000. So if I were to conduct this study in another another city, it may not have had the same results as far as the amount spent. And also the time of day, lunch or dinner. So I said I should do a better job at creating like an even amount from lunch and dinner because, like I said, the price is different. The pace of the meal is also different. So those are factors to take into consideration as well. And the significance, I would say that the National Restaurant Association said that companies that successfully engage customers outperform their competitors by 23% and had 62% lower customer attrition. So this is important because, as I mentioned earlier, people care more about the service of the dining experience more than their actual price. So this is something that restaurants need to be aware of, and also increase competition by 45%. So restaurants need to find a way to pull themselves apart from their competitors if they want to be successful in this growing market. And also with changing consumer preferences, because going into this, I didn't know that people actually were a fan of personal touches in restaurants because some people don't be bothered and everything. But I also work at a full service restaurant. People like when you talk to them. They like to be personal with you. So when you introduce that factor into the dining experience, it shows that they are willing to pay more when they have personalized experience. And so my contributions, so it applies the personalization effect and familiarity effect simply because when I personalize the dining experience through personal touches, they're likely to spend more money through tips or just their overall bill. And it also expands on the norm or reciprocity and mere exposure effect. As I mentioned before, Group A was on average frequent visitors than Group B. And sometimes when I go to the restaurant, it's like, hey, is Michelle here? Now, keep in mind, I may not know their name, but they know my name, and that's all that matters. And they're coming back to spend more money. And actually, with our surveys, because my restaurant does have customer engagement surveys, we had an 81% people said they were more likely to recommend our Longhorn, and 89% said they were likely to come back as well. So that's what's important for keeping sales in this growing market. And that concludes my presentation.
Any questions for Stephen? Maybe one quick one? Yeah, go ahead.
So you said that you found significant differences or non-significant. Did you run actual statistical analysis?
Well, I used on the sample data I had, and so I compared it to our company average and also just like from the study I have. So I had a group of 70 from Group A and Group B, and I just calculated differences from that. But
Did you run key test?
Q test. So not necessarily. I just used the just from this data and also our own company like data that we had as well.
And how many samples?
140.
Each group?
Oh, 70 and 70.
Maybe if there's one more quick question. If not, another round of applause.